Hey Cougs, welcome to this new thing we're doing on the stage we've never done before. If you watched the live stream for the Spokane show, we had a conversation over there with, Darren was actually on that episode. But we're doing this new thing, and the idea being we want to have some awesome, honest conversation about the workplace. The idea being maybe you can learn some tips, tricks, and things that could apply to you and your business. And I am just so lucky to be joined by Bria with Lions and Tigers. So Bria, could you start by telling everyone a little bit more about you and what you do?
Sure. Thanks, Kelsey. Hello, everybody. Hi. Hi. It's nice to see you. My name is Bria Starmer, and I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Lions and Tigers. It is not a cougar reference, but in the same vein. We are a consultancy that focuses on the future of work. And so what does that mean? That means that we center women, caretakers, and the BIPOC community, folks that are traditionally left out of corporate America, and we help create space for them. That means that we break apart work. We take traditional job descriptions and we make them more accessible by turning them into flexible, fractional work, and we give part-time consulting projects. It means that we enable business leaders to think about a next generation talent solution for their organizations so that they've got the right people in the right roles, regardless of whether they're in-house or out-of-house, which means that they're able to take advantage of the Great Resignation, the maternal drain, the things that are affecting our talent economy today, and we put that as a strategic advantage within their organization.
I love that. And by the way, Cougs who are networking, if you're having great conversation right now, you don't have a chance to stop and take a seat, don't you worry, because this whole thing will be on Facebook and YouTube, and you can watch it later, just so you know. But back to us. Bria, could you tell us quickly your WSU story and kind of the founding part of Lions and Tigers, how it came to be?
Sure. Okay, so I will admit that I was not planning to go to WSU first. I was enrolled at another school. I am the first in my family to go to college, and so I thought I was going somewhere else. And my mom said, hey, I think you should just go check out WSU. And I said, all right, I'll give it a chance. And so we drove over, and for those of you that have been to Pullman, you know what it's like to drive through the Palouse and to drive up those hills and to see this school sort of emerge. And it was like this Wizard of Oz moment for me, and I had just never seen anything like it, and I was immediately in love with what I saw. And I had a really tremendous experience at WSU. I owe so much of my leadership experience to WSU, and I met my husband at a frat party there, so.
Hey, I know that life.
We now have 3 kids together, but it all started at my time at WSU. I was in a sorority there, and then I was so fortunate to be elected the student body president at WSU, which was not a common thing for women, especially then. And so after WSU, my plan was to go into some sort of large enterprise. That was my criteria. And Microsoft was so kind to hire me. I was hired by a Coug there. And I spent about 4 years at Microsoft, and I felt this pull towards entrepreneurship, which I think a lot of the folks in this room may understand that drive to want to build something. And so I went and ran a few businesses, and then I was at a startup, and this is where my career planning ended, Kelsey. So I was pregnant with my first son. I was very excited about that, and I was let go. I was laid off in my 7th month of pregnancy, and I had no medical benefits. I had no career plan, and I felt, really afraid. That was a really scary time in my life. And so the only thing that I was able to do was to be a consultant. I said, well, will you at least hire me to consult in your organization? And after I had my son, I realized I just wanted to work part-time. I wanted to work 25 hours a week and try to figure out this tiny human. And I couldn't find a job that would enable me to do that. And I thought, well, seems like a miss in the market. And so Lions and Tigers was born as my children were born. And so the rest is history. We've now scaled our company to more than 100 folks. We support everywhere from startups to enterprise technology companies, and we're really driving forward some change in the way that we work.
I love that, and I think especially after the last couple of years, we can all acknowledge the flexible workplace and schedule is a thing that whether you want to acknowledge or not, as a business you get to address, because the people who want to come work for you have varying needs that they want in that workplace, and we get to accommodate it. It's an opportunity.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, we work a lot with organizations and brands that are asking, like, how do we attract talent? How do we think through where decisions are made and how power is held? And how do we do work so that it's effective and impactful, but also so that we create cultures of belonging? I come to that as a lens as a mother. I have 3 kids. I have a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 6-year-old. And so I have a very unique perspective on how work should be done. And advocacy is a big part of the work that we do.
Okay, I want to shift the focus to you and your business specifically. Sure. Obviously, you consult people, but you run a business of 100 people plus.
Yes.
How did you scale your business to that place?
Okay, well, it's very exhausting, especially while having children. I'll say that. But there's 2 real things that you need to scale a business. You need product market fit, and you need a culture that cares. And so I focused a lot on those 2 things early in building my business. Product market fit. For those of you that are not in the technology sector or in the services sector, we think about the way in which a client or a consultant or a customer would want to buy our services, and we need to demonstrate that there's demand for our work. So product market fit is one of the phases that we go through to think about validation before we want to invest more. So I've been in a product market fit stage for a couple of years. We've now found product market fit, so now you get to go into operations and scale. So that's kind of the phase of our business. The culture of belonging piece, that wasn't actually a strategy at first. I just wanted to treat people as humans, and I wanted to build a culture that wasn't like where I had come from. And so many people experience discrimination in the workforce. I experienced very direct pregnancy discrimination during my time being laid off and even trying to find jobs thereafter. And it is one of the things that I hear from most when I talk to candidates, that they experience some form of discrimination in their workplace. And so for many people of very different lived experiences, they're looking for different workplaces. And so we created a culture of safe harbor for them. What I didn't know is that business strategy was going to translate to a service line that now we will turn and offer others, because we think we've really cracked the code on the system for talent and how we attract and retain people that are the kinds of folks that everyone wants in the building.
I love that. And perfect segue into my next question, which is that delicate balance of productivity and happiness for employees. What are some quick tips you could give to people listening and watching on the live stream?
Yeah, so we have a philosophy at Lions and Tigers we call highest and best use. This is a term we borrowed from real estate, and I know we have a few real estate developers in the building. This concept refers to a plot of land, and a developer will look at a plot of land and think about how they might develop that to get the highest return on investment and value out of that, given the resources and boundaries of that plot of land. We apply that same principle to people and talent. And so one of the ways that we do that is we actually think about and write personal scopes of work. Now, not all of you are consultants, so you don't think about billing yourself by the hour, for instance. But if you were to turn that on for yourself and think about, what is my hourly rate? What am I best served in doing for my company and myself? And maybe we write that personal scope of work to be really crisp and clear about the boundaries that are actually true in our lives right now, which is very different than perhaps the boundaries that were true 2 years ago. And we use that to drive conversations at work with our managers, with our peers, and with ourselves to be really honest about what we need right now.
And what are some tools you've kind of learned in your process to help employees create those healthy work boundaries? Because we all know when you're remote, you can work and work and work. You're checking email. It's really hard because you're not physically leaving a location. So what are some tools that you and your team have implemented?
Yeah, it's interesting when you bill by the hour. So it changes the dynamic.
Perspective.
As opposed to if you're a salary employee, which feels like you can just go on forever. And so what we do, we create part-time work because it builds a container. So when you're working and billing 25 hours a week, it actually creates boundaries for you to be really mindful of. And if you work above that, you're giving away your time for free. So we really coach our folks to think about their containers. Now, we can also think about another concept, which we call impact over hours. And this is really not thinking about even hourly billing, but thinking about what is the outcome I'm trying to drive. And those are the conversations we have at work, is about setting key performance indicators with yourself as an entrepreneur or with your manager, for instance, where we're measuring the outcomes and we're not worrying about when the work is done. If your work is able to be accomplished asynchronously, then do that at 3 a.m. if you so wish. And as long as there's no performance considerations, then you should be able to do that.
Okay, I feel like that last point maybe comes from this point a little bit, which is how has becoming a mom changed how you run a business and also how you work?
Boy, I'm getting old, Kelsey. Like things have changed since the baby number 3. I will tell you that. I don't know what everyone's experience is here, but when I was younger, I really honestly survived through hustling, working more. I often did like a 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift, and that's when I did a lot of my best work, and I got ahead a lot from those hours. Yeah. Now I have kids waking up in the middle of the night. I have kids that my kids wake up at 5:30 every morning. So I just can't do that anymore. So my time has really shifted. My priorities have shifted. So I spend my time on more strategic endeavors that are more useful for me to do. And I try to downsource or outsource the rest where I'm not needed.
I love that. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what advice would you give to that first-time mom when you had that first kiddo? What advice would you give to her?
I think so many of us want to do everything perfectly. We just do, especially those of us that are driven, that feel like performance and progress is how we measure our success. And it's taken a lot of time for me to learn to slow down. And especially now, I think post-COVID, my sense of time has changed. I don't know about yours. Like I feel very differently about time. And so I think I would, encourage a new mom to really soak it in. My first son, I was laid off, so I had to self-fund an 11-week maternity leave. They had no benefits for that. My second son, I had 4 employees at Lions and Tigers, so I was just starting to scale the business, and I worked in the hospital while I was getting a C-section. So I worked that entire maternity leave, but honestly, it wasn't a burden. I was so fired up by the work that we were doing. I was so in love with this baby that those things were just like in harmony. And then my third daughter, she's now 1.5. I was the beneficiary of the Washington State Paid Leave Program. Washington is one of the 4 states in America that offers a paid leave program to parents. And I was able to get, I think it was 12 weeks of paid leave thanks to Washington State's progressive legislator. So those policies ensured that I was able to keep my business running and that I was able to come back whole. And so we're very lucky here in Washington that parents get to experience benefits like that.
And how, obviously you have your personal experience, which spills not only to how you run your business, but also how you work with clients. Yeah. So why should businesses be flexible and find a way to work with working moms? Why is that important?
People would ask me this question early in my motherhood journey, especially non-parents would say like, well, why should we hire a mom? And I felt like I would always answer like, well, we're productive and we multitask and, we're like really creative. But the reality is like, if you're not hiring mothers, you are missing 51% of the market who holds the attributes that are precisely aligned to the future of work. Yeah. There's in fact behavioral science that shows that in the year following having a baby, a mother and an engaged father's brain actually changes. The only other time in your life when that happens is when you're 0 to 5. So the actual way in which you think about the world and you prioritize care changes how you show up as an employee. And for brands and for employers that think about the power of their workforce and the strategic moves that they can do to not just accommodate parents, but really put them into positions of power, I argue will be the ones that succeed in the talent market that we have today, which is very different than the talent market of a decade ago.
Right. And what do you think holds businesses back from doing that? Is it because they don't want to offer a flexible work schedule or part-time, or what do you think some of those reasons might be?
I think that, the topic that we're talking about today is breaking away from the binary of a 9 to 5 schedule. Yeah. So, a lot of us have grown up that way. My dad didn't graduate from college. He worked basically shipping packages most of his life, and I watched him grind every day. And I realized, that's not how I want to raise my family, and I will not accept an environment that looks like that. And so for organizations that think about the kind of employees that they want to bring in, the kind of talent that they want to attract, they really need to think about what the market is demanding right now. So if anyone's following the labor market, which many of you have probably read headlines about the Great Resignation, I've talked about maternal drain, which is mothers dropping out of the workforce. What you'll know is in the last month, we've had 4 million people drop out of the workforce, and there's 1.9 jobs available for every unemployed person. It is a talent markets game. So for employers that are trying to see better returns for their shareholders, they want to see their stock prices go up. They're looking at better impact for their products going into market. They're looking at growth for their sales teams. If they're looking for business outcomes, they need to center their talent who are happy, productive, loyal workers to achieve their business objectives. And it's one major issue is thinking about this as a binary. This is only in or out. That's really what I experienced. I thought I only had one choice, in or out.
Yeah.
And I knew that there had to be another way.
Yeah. And I want to talk about something we kind of briefly talked about when we were chatting last, which is what about caretakers? Because this is a whole untapped segment that wasn't even on my radar, but absolutely is a group of people taking care of maybe their parents or their grandchildren. How do they fit into this equation?
Yeah, some of the new research suggests that about 74% of employee populations I would identify as a caretaker. These are folks who are mothers, fathers, but also caring for their aging parents, perhaps someone with COVID in your family. All of these are caretaker roles, and if you're to look at your population, it is likely either your biggest or your second biggest group of folks would identify as caretakers. So that makes us really want to think about what are the kinds of policies that we put in place from an HR perspective? How do we attract and retain those folks? How do we ensure that the ways in which we work enables their work, which is very unique, and also perhaps needs accommodation, needs flexibility. So you can look at things like job shares. You can look at things like split shifts. Hybrid work is a great way to think about this. Freeing people from synchronous work. At my company, we use a method called Impact Fridays. On Fridays, we have no meetings. We don't commit to anything from clients, and we just do work, or we don't. We also just go play. And that has been one of my most intelligent moves as a CEO. It was something that I wanted myself. And so it was one of the things that folks really asked for, and we just said, why not? We can do that. There's no problem for how that works in our working world. So I think there's a little bit of creativity needed right now, and now's the time for innovation.
Yeah, absolutely. So shifting gears, because we are at a CougsFirst event, what are some tips, advice you would give to people graduating right now or maybe making a career change? What's some advice you'd give?
Okay, so when I graduated from WSU, I felt like I went into the world with arms wide open. Like, I will take anything. And I don't know if you all felt that way too. You really just don't know what you want. And I think if I were to look back now, I would really think about how I entered into the workforce and I would lift others as I rose. And by that I mean, like, you can go in open and really clear that you're open to opportunities, but if you don't bring others along with you, if you don't give back as you're climbing that ladder, like, you're really going to miss an opportunity to extend access, to really build a really fruitful career and network that you'll be able to rely on later in life. And I don't think I really knew that early in my career.
Yeah. What do you think was the most valuable experience you had at WSU that kind of shaped you into the person you are today? And if you say student body president, I mean, I get it, but like, not many of us are going to relate to that.
Okay, that was a very unique experience for sure, and I have lots of stories about that. But
sure.
Actually, in some of my capstone projects, I was in the College of Business and in the College of Communications, and I wrote a business plan in one of my senior year projects, and I designed women's undergarment business. In my business plan, it was called Underwear, and it was going to design a store in Pullman was my plan. And that experience, I've hearkened back to that a lot. I've gone back and thought about, I now build business plans all the time. I have to think about the profitability, the growth plan, the go-to-market, like how we align, staff align to it. So that fundamental experience was really useful for me later in life.
I love that. When it comes to your team and your growth, and you said you figured this out already, but what are those core things you figured out in finding good people and getting them to stay?
Yeah, so Lions and Tigers, we're a team of about 100. We have about 70% of our workforce, 74% now, are women. 69% of us are caretakers, and 33% of us identify as BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous, people of color. We've worked really hard on measuring who is in our community, why they come, and why they stay. Part of that was, when I started this company, it was really about centering mothers. I knew from my own experience of discrimination I wanted to advocate for mothers. But really candidly, Kelsey, when George Floyd was murdered, it transformed the way that businesses think about inclusion. All of my clients came and said, well, what do we do about equity and inclusion in our organizations? And it, for me, changed the way in which I lead. We brought in a DEI consultant to our own team to think through and look at the way in which we operationalize inclusion, from the way we write jobs descriptions, to the copy on our website, to the imagery we use, to the onboarding experience, to the way that we measure happiness within our organization. And that motion has been so powerful for us because it has been such a unifying force, and it's opened our aperture for advocacy way beyond my lived experience. And so those kinds of empathetic moments for leaders, I think those are the times when we have to stop and say, I am not skilled enough to solve this on my own, and I need to bring in people who are experts to do that. And so that DEI journey has been something that's been really pivotal to how we think about showing up in the world, and then that's such a benefit to our clients too.
Absolutely. And advice or lessons learned in how to get those great employees to stay.
Yeah, well, I mean, you think about like free lunches and beer Fridays, and like that's just not my jam. If that's your jam, then that culture will fit for you. For me, I'm looking for organizational clarity. I'm looking for a purpose that I can align to, and that I know what's expected of me. And then from there, the rest of it is about being treated respectfully and like a human. And I say that, and I don't mean to be trite. That really is difficult for people sometimes to see the humanity in each other. And so those are the kinds of opportunities, those are the cultures that are winning right now. They're winning the war for talent. I'll tell you a story. Okay, so I just, I have this like fun content experiment I've been doing on LinkedIn. Okay. It's called Thoughts from the Pumping Room. If any of you have ever pumped before, pumped milk, some, maybe. Okay, I do this on camera. It's up high, but I do this on LinkedIn, and I just share like a thought, because pumping is a time that I could be billing. So I've turned that into something more useful for us. So yeah. I did a Thoughts from the Pumping Room last week, telling a story about Airbnb. Airbnb just announced a remote-first policy for their entire workforce. They put it on their website. They made an announcement. They said, you'll never have to come back to the office. Airbnb's website's career page saw 800,000 visitors in the weeks that followed that announcement. So this gives us a reason to pause. If we're not thinking about hybrid, if we're not thinking about how to center our employees and listening to what they need and giving that to them, someone else will.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. If someone chooses not to listen to that, do you think they're going to be able to find talent down the road? Or do you think this, I think this, in my opinion, I kind of feel like this is happening regardless. This shift, COVID forced it to happen, and now it's here to stay. This work remote, this hybrid model is a thing, and it's not going away. So I'm just curious your thoughts.
I think the organizations need to think about one thing. Who do they want to serve? And a lot of times that is our customers. Our customers are first. You hear a lot about customer centricity. Now the role of CHROs or VPs of HR are being asked to join in on a revenue conversation, on a strategy conversation about their business. So things have really shifted for how organizations have to think about the future of their talent pool. I'm particularly interested in outsourced talent. We think about layered talent systems. So the way that Lions and Tigers approaches it is not only do we want our clients and their cultures to be cultures of belonging, so we help them with that, but we help them think about outsourced talent so that they can think about a next generation talent model. They might want to access and outsource some portions of their business for efficiency, for impact, for specialization. We enable access to that talent, primarily women, BIPOC, caretakers. Those are the folks that they're trying to attract and are losing out of full-time jobs. So this is one inclusion strategy that organizations can use when they're thinking about how do we really compete and stay ahead if maybe our organization isn't quite ready to make that shift yet.
Okay, and we have to end on this note. So for those that don't know, I have a podcast called When I Grow Up Pod. And I have to ask you the generic question, which is, if you could give yourself one piece of advice to a younger version of you, what would that piece of advice be?
It would be to ask. Ask for what you need and what you want. And I know it's hard when you don't know what you want, but the question I would think about before you come into a room is to ask, what do I want to learn next? and what can I contribute to this relationship? And if you can go into your relationships with those two questions in mind, you can come out with some conclusions as opposed to just really sort of searching for something that you don't know what you're looking for.
Great answer. Bria, thank you so much for your time. Could you tell the people where to find more about you and Lions and Tigers? That would be amazing.
Sure. Lions-tigers.com. We're super active on LinkedIn and Instagram if you want to follow us there. And I love to connect with people on LinkedIn. So I'm Bria, B-R-E-A, Starmer, S-T-A-R-M-E-R, and I'd love to connect with any of you.
Perfect. And I'm Kelsey with Kelsey Marie Coaching. You can find me on the internet if you search that. Thank you all so much for your time. Thank you, Bria. I really appreciate our conversation today.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelsey. Go Cougs!
Go Cougs!